Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Best of Pedalshift. On this edition, a timely topic for those of you, especially in the Northern Hemisphere, but if you're in the Southern Hemisphere, hi, think about this for next year. This is all about winter bicycle touring maintenance. I think that winter is the perfect time to hit reset on your bicycle, your touring bike in particular, and these are tips for what you can do yourself, and maybe if it's time for you to take it into your local bicycle shop, what you can do for all of that. Also, some tips on winter bicycle maintenance if you're riding year-round, like someone like me who has the fortune, the good luck, the whatever you want to call it, for being able to ride most of the year, what you can handle during winter months. Without further ado, here is the Best of Pedalshift from January 2018. Pedalshift number 104.
So as I said, it's been kind of a winter wonderland out there. We got a little bit of snow last night as I record this. So things are sort of all cold and icy and wintry and crazy out there. So I'm in sort of winter bike maintenance mode. One of the things I talked about on the last episode of the pod, my bike is in for maintenance at my local bike shop of choice here in DC. They've got a good special, so I usually like taking it then. I'd recommended that, a lot of bike shops around in your hometown where you're at, maybe doing winter bike specials as well. So go check that out if it's available. You can get good bang for the buck. Let's put it that way. One of the things that they said to me was that my dyno hub wheel was toast. So we're going to have to pour one out for my dyno hub wheel on my Safari. It rode literally thousands of miles, generated a lot of electrons for me, but now it's toast. The whole thing, it was approaching dangerous, basically. It was sort of what was my interpretation of how the guy was wiggling things with a wheel. So I'm going to be going back to the stock touring front wheel. Since my conversion to the dyno hub guy, from dyno hub guy to bring three batteries guy, I don't think I'm going to get another dyno hub wheel. Although I certainly think that they have a lot of usefulness for folks that are on expedition style tours. So maybe someday if I get into that kind of a thing, I'll reconsider. But for now, I think I'm just going to go back to basic straight up front wheel, and I'm excited about that because I didn't have to buy a new wheel. I had that lying around. It was kind of funny. I had that wheel out in Portland in my brother's garage since the 2014 ride. When I did the entire Pacific Coast, because I shipped the dyno hub wheel out. And wheels, if you've never shipped one in the States, are just big enough to make the package of unusual size and therefore extremely expensive to ship. And that was kind of a bummer. It was something I discovered. So that's why I kept the spare wheel out there. But then when I got my elite status on Alaska Airlines, thank you very much, I was able to fly a lot of stuff back for free, basically. Now, I think I've talked about this on the pod, Alaska Airlines here in the States, probably good to review this. I get this question a lot. Alaska Airlines is probably your best bet for flying with a bike. If you've got no special stuff going on, it's $25 to fly a bike, boxed up or bagged up. So I was all set to do that with my wheel because I also had a bike bag out there. I wasn't planning on flying back a bike, but then I got elite status, and also if you have an Alaska credit card, I guess you get a free bag and all that other stuff. Anyways, if you have a free bag on Alaska, your bike can count as the free part of the free bag allowance. So that's really dope. So I was able to bring back my bike bag and that wheel before I found out that my dyno hub wheel was toast. So it ended up being a really great thing that I had that on hand. So that was good. That was a lot of information that I just kind of threw out randomly. I felt like I just barfed out a lot of like rando information to you when I'm supposed to be talking about, winter bike maintenance. So why don't we kick into that a little bit? This time of year, it was really dependent upon where you're at. When I talk about winter bike maintenance, I'm talking about it from my very narrow point of view here in the Northeast of the United States of America. So your mileage may vary. Your winters may not be anything like this. This is for folks who are having icy, snowy, or wet conditions. It doesn't even have to be ice or snow. It just has to be cold and wet because I think that changes things for bikes. So if you're planning on riding in these conditions or planning on riding anywhere in or around these conditions, this is going to be helpful for you. I also think that it's helpful for even those of you who are in the tropics and don't get anywhere near this kind of weather, because frankly, it's good bike maintenance tips any time of year. But I'm going to talk about a few things that are very specific for winter, snow, ice type style. So everybody, this will be applicable for. Some things will be more applicable than others. There we go. All right. Number one, keep it clean. I think during the winter, more than any other time of year, snow and ice conditions, it is the most important time to keep your bike clean. During drier conditions, you don't have to worry about it so much. But when you're riding in snow and ice and maybe cold rain, and even more so for those snow and ice folks, if you're in areas where roads or pathways are treated with salt or other types of chemical de-icers, this is when things are really, really critical. You want to clean your parts periodically if you get a little bit of a thaw, but for the most part, always make sure you wipe down your bike and all of the components to the fullest extent you can after any kind of a ride. Water plus metal equals rust generally, unless it's the type of metal that it doesn't rust. Hi, you titanium folks. But I think that it is critically important during this time of year, especially if you're getting chemicals showered upon your precious steed, to make sure that you are wiping stuff down. Also, it stops things from being a bit of a mess. I'm looking across the room right now and peering at my Brompton, which is all folded up in its little spot in the corner that it occupies. And I had to fold up a whole bunch of newspaper to put down on the ground, because although I was able to wipe down stuff, there was still some excess stuff that once you fold it, things go upside down in the bike. And so I needed to make sure that it wasn't going to get everywhere. But that also gave the water a place to go to where it would be absorbed and away from the bike. So that was another kind of element to my wipe down process. I tend not to like to ride the Brompton in snowy and icy conditions. It's just, it can do it. It's fine. The geometry is fine. It's just not my preferred bike to do. I would rather have the larger full-size bike, but like I said, it's been in the shop. So keep it clean. Keep that stuff clean. Number 2 in winter bike maintenance, do a full inspection of your wearables. And this is more of a kind of, it's a good time of year to do this kind of a thing than you should be doing this in winter in particular. You should be doing this all year round. But look at your chain, look at your cassette, and look at your brake pads if you've got them. To the extent if you've got non-rim pad brakes, if you've got the other types, which the name escapes me at the moment. You can tell it's winter, right? Those are the types of things that have consumables that you'll want to be taking a look at. Actually, all types of brakes have some kind of consumable. Replace them as needed. The reason why I say this is, again, it's relevant to what's happening with my bike and its maintenance point right now. I rode it a lot this year, and it had a lot of use, and use on a chain means it stretches, and as a chain stretches, it becomes more worn, and that's a problem overall. It'll stop you from being able to shift as well, yada, yada, yada. Also, you're going to get wear on your cassette over time. What'll happen is, if you're not familiar with how these things work, of course, you've got the little teeth on the cogs. If this is remedial, please skip ahead if you want. But over time and overall the shifting with the cassette, the chain and the cassette, kind of it's metal on metal. So if you don't have it perfectly lubed every time, and actually, even if you do have it perfectly lubed, eventually those things are going to wear down. And as those teeth wear down, you're going to have issues with shifting. So after X number 1,000 miles, it's usually time to not only replace your chain, but replace your cassette. And at least with the bike mechanics that I've ever dealt with, they pretty much always say if you're replacing one, you should be replacing both, which of course adds to the expense, but it's worth it in the long run when you've got a machine, your bike, that is in good working order and just, smoothly shifts. It's a lot easier when you're out in the middle of nowhere to be able to trust your bike in that scenario. I remember when I was a kid, I had my bike in the shop precisely 0% of the time. Like never. I don't think I ever brought any of my bikes as a kid into the shop. I just, when the chains rattled, you just dealt with it. And you kind of learned how to adjust the levers and whatnot, and the barrel adjusters, and you made do, and you sprayed it with WD-40, which you should never do, and all those other things that you did before you knew any better. That's kind of what you did, or at least it's what I did in Western New York as a kid. And my 10-speed had 2 or 3 usable gears in its end of life status, things like that. I mean, that's what you did. Now I know better, and I throw a few bucks at it. And what I can't fix myself, I pay other folks to do, and then they tell me, hey, it's time to replace this. And I say, okay. That's usually how I work with bicycle maintenance these days. Number 3, lube up. Lubricate liberally during the cold season, but always wipe it down. You remember, you don't want excess. In cold, icy conditions, you're going to want to make sure that you've got good lubrication going on, because as stuff freezes up, you're going to run into a bigger problem. So make sure that you're doing a good job with lubricating your chain, i.e. do a better job than me, because I am lousy at it. I am always shamed when I'm on bike tour. I don't know if you're good at lubing your chain, but when I rode this past fall, Daniel, the guy I was riding with, was so good about it. He lubed his chain every day. He was perfect with his bicycle maintenance. Now, he had a really nice bike and he knew what he was doing. And I was the guy who was like, oh, I guess I should lube my chain every once in a while. I get shamed into it when it comes to lubrication. I just don't do a good enough job of it. I'm going to try to be better when I get my bike back. I'm going to lubricate my chain more often. Dry lubes are often recommended by people who know better than me about lubricating chains, and they're better during winter, according to some. I don't think this is a universally held fact. I do know that dry lubes, those are kind of more like powders, for a better way to put it. They need to be done more often, but they're better in cold weather, according to some people, but not necessarily everyone. Some people like to stick with the same lube all the time. I have read and consumed information in the past that suggests that you should stick with the same lube with your chain for its entire run. That strikes me as being a little over the top, but regardless, I would say that in the winter, during wet, icy, rainy, snowy, whatever you're getting kind of seasons, making sure that your chain is properly lubricated is really, really, really important. Again, chains can get rusty. You want to make sure that the lubrication can kind of help prevent that, and also make shifting that much easier. Or if you're on a fixie, just moving that much easier. It's better for your bike overall. Next up on winter bike maintenance, and this is sort of my last admonition to those of you out there who are still resisting the fenders. Look, fenders are good. Fenders, I was against the fenders for a long time. In fact, if you look at the last episode, go back to pedalshift.net/103. I've got a picture of my bike during that winter tour that I talked about, that story. And if you look closely at the pictures, one of the things that caused me great consternation, that was a real killer for me, and in fact was the thing that finally got me to break down and get fenders, was the fact that I had no fenders in a time when I really, really needed them on a wet, rainy, cold C&O ride. Even if all you do is ride on pavement or trails that are paved, you're just dealing with wet puddles as opposed to mud and other things like that. This is the time of year when that can really be helpful. It keeps water and maybe the salt that's in the water from the melting ice from getting onto your components as much, and it can help extend the life of your bike and those components. I just think it's a good idea. So maybe if you're riding in the winter and you eschew fenders during the rest of the year for some reason, consider doing something to get fenders during this time of year. It just really makes a big difference. One thing that I will caution you on, if you're new to the world of fenders, be mindful of the clearance between the fender and your tire. These things are not universal. In fact, fenders can be a little bit tricky to install yourself. It's a lot of kind of trial and error and a little bit of, lengthen this thing and tighten this down and just kind of see how it goes. What I have found during icy rides, you're going through snow in particular, is you will find that ice and slush will start to build up between the fender and your tire. Same thing with sticky mud. If you're in a real clayey mud area, a mud that is made a lot of clayey, I think that's an actual word, that it builds up just the same. And then what you can get is this almost like kind of seizing thing that happens. And it doesn't fully seize, but it's like you're getting, your brakes are on. And it can also wear down your tires. So you want to be careful about all of that. Anyways, so not a lot of really winter specific stuff, just it's a good time of year, a lot of these things. I'll just do a quick review. Keep it clean. Make sure that if you are especially going through salty conditions, you've got chemicals, salts, things like that are de-icing the roads that you are on. Make double sure that you keep your bike clean. But during this time of year, things are either wet or otherwise icy. You want to make sure you keep those components that are susceptible to rusting, keep them dry as much as possible. Do a full inspection of your wearables. It's a good time for that. We're talking your chain, your cassette, your brake pads. Your local bike shop could be really helpful for that. You may not have a chain measurer. They actually have a special tool for that to check to see if your chain is stretched or not. That is very helpful to have. Some of those mini toolkits actually have them, believe it or not. It's kind of cool. I don't have one. Lube up. Make sure you're lubing and you are using the right lube for you. That is a different podcast. I'm going to move on. And if you don't have fenders, consider getting them. I think that is a good idea. I recommend fenders if you're touring. I really do. It makes a big difference. It keeps water off of you. It keeps mud off of you, and it keeps mud and water off of your gear as well, which I think is a really good idea. One other thing that I wanted to mention, I talk about this in the concept of, bike maintenance, winter bike maintenance, but now's a good time to kind of do an assessment of your bike touring gear that's not your bike. Does your tent need seam sealing? Has it been a few seasons since you've done something like that? Have you ever done anything like that? It's a good time to do that. I recently had to seam seal my tent because I noticed a leak on one of my tours this summer, and then did it before the fall, and everything is great now. And it just lengthens the lifespan of a good tent if you like your tent. But maybe you've got a few things that you are really looking to replace. I know a lot of you who listen to the show are beginners and ask, do I need all of this gear? And I say, no, just go with what you've got, borrow gear. This might be the time of year when you've done your first season, or you've done your first trip, and you're like, well, it was really great. I had a lot of fun. I'm definitely going to do this now. But that tent was more of a car camping tent, and I want to look into something that's a little bit better for bicycle touring. Well, now's the time to start thinking about making a wish list of stuff like that and comparing and doing some research. We've got about 104 episodes of this show for all sorts of different ideas on what I think is a reasonably decent idea in terms of tents and bikes and tires and all sorts of different things. So think about all of these things and make a list. Lists are good for this time of year. So that's that for winter bike maintenance, and a little tidbit there on gear for winter. Thinking about gear during your winter breaks. Thank you for joining. You can find Pedalshift at pedalshift.net for more great bicycle touring content. You can hear the Pedalshift project through Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast app. Opening music courtesy of Jason Kent off his self-titled album. The track is called America. Check out his band Sunfield's latest release, Mono Mono, wherever cool music is available.